This'll definitely work. You are listening to the Remain Indoors podcast. We remain indoors. No, that kind of doesn't work, but this is the Remain Indoors podcast, where we'll be looking at some lighter news from around the internet, having a grumble when required, and talking about the ways we're keeping ourselves entertained at home. Remain indoors. I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready. No, you couldn't find the proper intro music, so used the intro music from another podcast. How dare you accuse me of doing that? I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready, and I'm joined by Matt Two Rumpets. Good morning, Matt. Matt, how good morning?
Yes, how good afternoon to you too, Brown Cow.
Right, I may not have been the most organised person in the world for this stream today. None of it was my fault. It was all various other people's faults. But you have been fairly crabby yourself. You're a crabby old man this morning.
First of all, you had to be here for the Spanner's wife blame fest that just happened and probably will get cut in the edit because he wants to not sleep in this shed tonight. And second of all, you were right. I have on occasion been a crabby old man. But what's hilarious is yesterday in our kitchen, my very own wife was going off about something, and suddenly she stopped and she goes, "Oh my God, I've become that person. I've become the crabby old person yelling at people about everything." And I'm like, welcome to the dark side, dear.
I thought that was deliberate. I mean, I do follow your wife's Twitter feed. It's not the world's most chilled out Twitter feed. She seems fairly, animated about stuff.
Yeah. She may have an opinion or two. I will just leave it at that.
It's like when you're talking to your kids and, you say things like, you're making my life harder, or I can't think of any now, but, you'd say those phrases and you go, oh, that's my dad. And that was it. My kid was like, I'm bored. And I instinctively turned around to him and said, go and play with the traffic. Because that's what my dad used to say to me. I'd go, Dad, I'm bored. He'd go play with the traffic, or go take a long walk off a short pier. Or I'd say, oh, Dad, I'm hungry. And he'd go, what do you want? Kick in the teeth, smack in the mouth. Like, no, Dad, those things aren't food. And I find myself saying that to the kids and go, oh, God, it just comes to your brain instinctively. And you go, oh, my God, I'm my dad.
Yeah, no, it happens over a period of time. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I have become that person. And then you embrace it in all its joy.
I definitely feel like dad. And it's the kids that make you feel like dad. For example, they were speaking to me and they had some issue and they didn't tell me about it. I said, well, why didn't you tell me about it? And it's because the inner door was shut on the shed. The soundproof door was shut. And
right.
and it's painted blue on the inside. So when the inner door is shut, outside the shed, they see the door goes blue. And I said, well, why didn't you come to me? And they said, well, the door's blue. You never disturb Daddy when the door's blue. And that really made me feel like a full-on grown-up, that there's these kids with their own kind of internal thinkings, and they treat me as this kind of entity that can be disturbed or not disturbed at certain times. No. We never make Daddy angry by disturbing him when the door is blue.
Just give it another year or two, and then the game will be to make Daddy angry on purpose at certain times for my own amusement.
So before we bring in your guest, my daughter has stitched me up royally. I cannot stand garden peas. Like you're saying, they have a game to upset you. I can't stand garden peas.
Neither can my wife.
Oh,
she
really?
won't put them in any food at all, and she'll even pick them out of food when she finds them. I do not understand this behavior, but there you go.
Me too. And I wonder if there's a gene, because my wife loves the taste. The kids love garden peas. To me, it tastes like dirty foot water exploding in your mouth. Like when you bite it, you get that instant, and it's not like, oh, I don't mind them or I don't love them. I can't stand it. It's like dishwater. It's horrible. I bite it, and the second I bite it, I go, oh God, that's ruined taste for the whole week. My kids know this. So you know the dad thing when you're looking around, you've eaten your food, and you're looking at the kids' plates going, you're going to finish that? You're going to finish that?
Yeah.
You're going to. I've got my fork hovering, and they know. When they see the fork hovering, they pull their food closer, and they're like, no, mine, mine. So my daughter, she had a bit of fish left, and she said, do you want some of my fish, Dad? It was breaded fish, like fridge food, breaded fish. So she said, do you want a bit of my fish, Dad? And I was like, oh, thanks. I was hungry. I had not served myself enough. She hands over to me the fish. I eat it, right? It's not fish. It is the empty breadcrumb shell of the fish filled with garden peas, and I take a full greedy mouthful, and I'm just like, no, oh God, why? My mouth is really... And she is absolutely collapsing in tears. She's folding off her chair. She drops to the floor. Like, she is so pleased with herself. It's unbelievable. Horrible, horrible, rotten little git.
Yeah, well, I got to say, I'm going to use the word precocious because that's the kind of thing that I would expect from a child several years older than her. So good on her for getting in there early.
I felt like such a victim. Everyone else found it so funny. Matt, I'm excited. We're going to talk beer. Why don't you introduce who you've brought along to the podcast today?
I have brought my friend and beer expert, Dr. Eric Hops Davis, on to talk about all things beer, occasionally some music, possibly some reminiscences from the past. And I will say that as part of this broadcast, I may be consuming an actual alcoholic beverage. So make sure the kids are not around. That's a joke, of course. And yeah, you should have seen me explaining to my wife why I was getting a beer out of the refrigerator. But first, let's say hi to Eric. Eric, man, how's it going?
Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I'm doing well.
Firstly, Eric, you didn't say that you were Dr. Eric. You're what, like a medical doctor? You're going to give us CPR?
No, in music.
Nah, you can't do that. Yeah. You can't be a doctor of music. Were you a doctor of sing-songs?
Yeah, exactly. I saved my doctor title for when I need it.
What is it? What is your doctorate in, Eric?
I mean, actually, it's in French horn. In my instrument, so I did a whole my thesis and everything about the history of the instrument and from where it came from, the beginnings from the early times all the way up till now, and it specifically talked about specific styles of instrument, and comparing countries and styles of horn playing around the world.
Oh wow! And so you're a doctor, or you're a doctor of the French horn. And you've come to talk to us about beer, and your surname is Hops. Is this a massive stitch-up? Am I being pranked?
No, beer is actually my second passion. The French horn and beer seem to go hand in hand for me. I started off at an early age, traveling in Europe, trying out some of the beers that we couldn't get in the States, and I fell in love with it. It turned out I worked at a craft beer bar here in New York City, which was one of the pioneers of the craft beer early on in the craft beer scene before it became what it is now. I work for a craft beer distributor here in New York. So I was a sales rep selling the craft beer, and I've met several people. I have friends who've opened up craft breweries here in the States, and it's been great. I love it.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that you worked for I didn't remember it because we've known each other a fairly long time at this point, and I have no memory left. Which bar was it you started out at?
I started working at the Waterfront Ale House. They had one location in downtown Brooklyn, and they were one of the early craft beers. There weren't many around at that time. I'm talking about in the 90s. They had the Waterfront Ale House. There was this great beer bar in Williamsburg in Brooklyn, the Hipsterville, that's now become Hipsterville, called Mugs. There's their downtown bar and grill. There were several very small. Blind Tiger in the West Village in Manhattan. Very small group, but it's exploded now.
Yeah, it absolutely has. Taylor Mesa in the chat room would actually like a breakfast beer recommendation if you have one.
Whoo. Are they in the States?
Yes. Yeah.
It should be available more on the shelf, but depending on what area you're in, I would really explore some of the craft breweries locally, because they tend to make their own type of stouts and different things, and you never know what you're really going to find. Coffee stouts are real popular.
Wait a minute, I've just kind of let that go real quick, but we're talking about breakfast beers. We're talking about having beers around breakfast time.
Beers made in the style of breakfast.
Oh,
like
okay.
Coffee in the beer. Sometimes they do like a maple pancake breakfast beer, or they'll put maple syrup and cinnamon and try and simulate these type of flavors that they want to use in to kind of create this thing. And that's within the States, they call it breakfast beer. In Germany, the breakfast beer is a wheat beer because it's full of vitamin B.
It's New York in the background. Beep, beep.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to get.
That's okay.
It absolutely is. And in beer's defense, it is not called liquid bread for nothing. It was and continues to be a meal substitute for many, many people, although not always healthily, it should be said.
Well, it's much fabled, and I don't know how true this is, that in like 17th, 18th century Britain, it was a lot safer to drink the beer than it was to drink water in the water system. So people would regularly drink beer as their liquid. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Right.
Yes. I mean, because, well, they cooked it so it would pasteurize it, and because the water wasn't very safe to drink. So in order to do it, they created something where they could get their water intake. Just like the Brits created the IPA.
Oh, go on then. Is that a good a leaping point off? We'll get to how the Brits created the IPA just on breakfast beers, Taylor, because you've set me down this path now of thinking when it's acceptable to drink. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I enjoy a beer. I like a drink. Alcohol makes the sad go away. You know, enjoyed responsibly, but more so irresponsibly. I don't mind having a pint, especially when you're a parent and you finally got the kids to bed and you go, oh yeah. The last thing I want to do is be alone with my own thoughts. Beer will help me. Beer is a constant companion. But generally, 12 o'clock, I feel like if you're going to have a beer at lunchtime, it's got to be like an exceptional circumstance. You know, for me, alcohol has always been an evening thing. And to go before midday, it either has to be a wedding, it has to be I'm trying to think of my excuses now. Wedding's a good one. Christmas morning, where you can have some like Bucks Fizz or something like that. But very rare occasions. But Matt, I think the third one in that list is if you are on a podcast talking about beer, you're allowed to crack one open in the morning. So you and I have wanted to have a beer on this podcast for a fair while. We'll talk about what beers we're having in a second. But me and Matt, we're going to crack into ours. So mine's a bottle. Okay, I'm cracking into a sweet and spicy. If that was radio, I'd have to write an apology to the manager. Cracking into a sweet and spicy golden ale. So I've got the Blandford Fly because for my birthday, my wife and family, they put together for me a beer box with a beer snack. The snack they chose was 100% chocolate, which, by the way, is disgusting. I love dark chocolates and stuff, but that was gross. Matt, what are you having? What are you cracking open?
Eric and I are cracking open a Mas Verde, which he brought back from Vermont. Now, Eric and I, like I said, we've been friends, and one of our favorite things to do is to just hang out and drink different beers together and just talk about the beers and anything else that comes up. And this is a beer that we were going to drink together, but then, unlike me, wallowing in the pit of musical mediocrity, Eric here is a high flyer in the musical world, and he's actually busy doing stuff, so we didn't have time to. So we decided we'd have our beer together on the podcast now. So Eric, if you want to open up your beer too,
sir.
Let's do this thing.
I cracked it. I'll give it. This beer is called Mas Verde from River Roost Brewing in White River Junction, Vermont. Very small town, but Vermont is a great state when it comes to kind of that hazy IPA craze that's been really popular around. And I mean, it's mostly what the style I drink now, but I've for many years I've grown into a lot of different styles. But I also have a glass from the brewery, so it's
nice. You got the fancy beer glass.
Yeah, I do. I poured it in my I like my beers.
That is super posh. Well, didn't I hear that you're Eric? Aren't you working later?
Yes, I am. I have a recording session after this.
But you're a musician, so it doesn't matter because it's not a real job. So you can be half cut.
Well, I mean, it's only one beer.
Anyway, cheers, gentlemen. Cheers. Thank you very much. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so.
Well, and cheers to everybody out there.
Good. And, it's a good time to toast Remain Indoors, where we have genuinely had, I think, about 40 completely sober podcasts. It was time for that run to end. And I have to say, I feel guilty. 2 o'clock in the afternoon does feel a little bit...
By 9:20.
Doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't feel quite right. But that's good. Okay, let's start off with that interesting fact then. The British inventing IPA What is IPA? I'm coming at this fairly new to ales. I transitioned over from young lager lout to sort of ale-y person about 5 years ago, but I'm certainly no expert. I don't know the terms. So maybe starting with what is an IPA and then how the English invented it as we did everything because we're great.
Well, I mean, IPA is called India Pale Ale.
Oh, right.
And so logically, from historically speaking, it was said that when the British were going back and forth to India, they would carry barrels of beer with them, and somehow they had some hops, and the hops actually kind of fell into the barrel on the journey. And when they got to India, they realized that the beer was still fresh and amazing, and the hops that fell in there kind of the oils from the acids and the hops kind of flavored it and gave it this kind of hoppy aroma. And so they realized that the hops could actually preserve the beer a little bit longer, for the journey, as opposed to it wouldn't go bad by the time they made it, because the hops just prolonged it. And then it became this whole thing. And one of my early beers that I had was by Brooklyn Brewery, which was one of the very few craft breweries that were making craft beer. There's one of their specific styles is called East India Pale Ale.
Right. So in my sort of transition over from just being a pure lager lout, one of the ones that I've kind of latched onto is one of the very popular ones, which is the punk. Everyone's heard of the Brewdog IPA, and it's kind of like swept. They've had a great marketing campaign. I think it's a really good IPA. But I think with the IPAs, what seems to appeal to me is they are actually a little bit sweet. Or am I kind of imagining that?
No, I mean, yes, they are sweet. They can be sweet. The thing about the IPAs and depending on the style of the IPA, because we live in the Northeast, and the Northeast was kind of created this whole new type of IPA, which is what we're drinking, called the New England IPA, which is like a hazy IPA. So they won't use a lot of malt in these beers. There's very little malt that they use in these beers. Some of the beers like Brewdog and stuff, like a California, like a West Coast style beer that was really the prevalent style, has a little bit more malt. So you get some of that sweetness off of the malt and the hops. And so it's like a nice combination of having it be kind of hoppy and sweet at the same time. So it's really interesting. So there's, even within the IPA, there's so many different styles of brewing, but this style has taken off incredibly and created that kind of
big buzz
hipster, a lot, and a lot of brewers around the world are starting to follow in those steps.
So one thing that interests me is, where does this haze actually come from? I've always sort of wondered that, but it's also interesting to me that we sort of are developing these distinct regional styles. But I mean, wasn't originally the whole craft brewing thing just chucking all the styles out the window and going mad with whatever it is you wanted to do? And is that still happening?
Yes. There've been a lot of different styles. I mean, even within the IPA, they're making sour IPAs now, where they kind of make them sour and put lactose and put sugar in them to kind of make them sweet. So they call them milkshakes. I mean, they come up with a lot of different words for them. The thing about the haze here is that oftentimes the brewing for an ale is a quick beer to make. It only takes about 2 weeks to ferment, and you're ready to pretty much after 2 weeks, maybe a few days of resting, you're able to move that out, and that's why it's also become very popular. But they do add some adjuncts in with the beer to make it hazy. They'll use flaked wheat or oats. And what that does is it gives it kind of like a mouthfeel. So you get that kind of chewiness and mouthfeel from that.
Yeah, and I'm actually getting that. And I will say, with oats, at least, and wheat, then technically we're entirely fine consuming this for breakfast, just like I told my wife, right?
Yes, exactly.
So one thing I've sort of had to adapt to a little bit from switching to just instinctively going to a pub and ordering a pint of lager. I know we've got the authentic sounds as well of glasses going down on coasters and some slurping. If we could do some slurping in the background as well, that would be awesome, Matt. Some tactical slurping. Yeah, I think it's called, what's that called? When you make all the sounds in the sound booth? Someone will tell me the term for it, sound effects.
Foley artist.
Foley, that's it. We're basically Foley artists right now. But yeah, so instinctively, you know, I'd go to a pub, post-football pint, something like that, and you just go, yeah, pint of lager, which one? I don't know, just the coldest one, just the absolute coldest one you've got. And something that we've had to adapt to is kind of going with these ales. If you have a pint of one ale and then you go, oh, that's interesting, I want to try the different one on the tap, then by the time that you get to like pint 3, it really doesn't matter what you're drinking anymore because, you know, you're quite merry. So I've started ordering them in halves, and that was quite a mental block to get over. So I could have a half, sit there, relax in it, then get another one, and actually I could enjoy like 3 or 4 different tastes. Where with lager, it doesn't matter, you just smash it down. And now we have made this a call-in show in general, and we share the link, and we've got Ramgun. Oh my God, that's a good username. Ramgun, is that your name? Hello, how are you? Ramgun, can you hear us? You've not unmuted your mic and you've not selected your audio. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, there we go. He's figured it out. He's connecting to audio now. Tell me, Ramgun is either your name or just like the best username ever. And now you're on mute as well. We'll get there. That's all right. Yeah, you have to click that. There's a little box. There we go. You got it. How's it going? Hello.
Hello.
We got there in the end. Who are we talking to?
Success.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. What's your name?
My name is Ramgun. I'm
good.
from Nepal.
Oh, Nepal. Fantastic.
Wow.
So did you? Yeah, go on. No, I've served with some Nepalese people with your good Gurkha regiment over here in the UK. Absolutely height of professionalism, but please don't take offence. Absolutely crazy and to be avoided.
I just saw your live on YouTube.
Okay, do you have a question for us, Ramgun?
No. I just come to.
Brilliant. Well, hello to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the stream. Well, there you go. Just come and say hello. Coming armed with a question, perhaps better, but I'm not going to judge anyone. Yes, I've drunk with the. Have you guys heard of the Gurkha regiment, which is Nepalese soldiers that join the British Army?
Yep.
Scary dudes. Great soldiers. They have a knife in their sheath, and whenever, if it ever comes out for any reason, it has to draw blood before it can go back in. This is the kind of mentality and culture they've got. And I've been out drinking with them a few times, and it's never really ended well. They weren't your kind of, you know, just sip gently on a half an ale kind of guys in this particular circumstance. This was, no, let's get out of here alive. Glad I've got that memory. I'm not going to do that again anytime soon.
It just makes you stronger, but you survived there.
So, Eric, I'm going to ask you a little bit about this beer we're drinking because, my God, it's fantastic. What exactly have they chucked in here? Like, what hops are in here, and what else have they added?
This one actually has 2 hops in it. It's Citra hops and Chinook. Chinook is we get a lot of that bitterness or that dryness from it from the Chinook hop, because the Chinook hop is a little bit Chinook has a higher alpha acid in the hops, and when we're dealing with hops, the higher the alpha acid, the more bitter it's going to be for the hop. And so if you were going to boil, say if we're making an IPA like this, and you kind of wanted to make it really bitter and kind of earthy and not that kind of fruity aroma that the other IPAs add, they'll put some of those hops in the beginning of the boil, like Chinook. There's a couple others that I'm totally escaping, but that if you put it in a 60-minute boil, you put that in early on if you want that real strong bittering component. The later you put the hops in the boil, the less bitterness you're going to get in it, and that's what a lot of these New England IPAs are. And that's because they're putting the hops late in the boil, and if they're putting in some hops during the boil, they're putting in just a little bit, because what they're really doing at the end is when they go to ferment it, they just throw a ton of hops in there right there to get the oils out into that, to give it the flavor.
Okay, so that's quite advanced level stuff. Let's bring it down to my idiot.
Right. Totally.
Let's bring it down to my idiot level for a second, right? When I'm going into a bar and ordering my ale, What are some of the key words to look out for? So if I say a West Coast IPA, I might perhaps be getting a sweeter one. If I go for an East Coast IPA, I'm going for something a little bit more hazy, although I don't know what hazy means.
It's cloudy where you can't see through the glass.
Right. I see. Yeah.
So yeah, it would be a New England. I mean, it would be more specifically like a New England IPA if you wanted like the hazy, the haziness, the hazy kind of IPA like we're drinking now. East Coast IPAs are somewhat similar to the West Coast, depending. It's New England that has this, but this style. A lot of the breweries are all doing this. In California, they have Monkish Brewing, which is really fantastic, making great beers.
Right. So you were telling us about the different flavors of the hops. And so blending the flavors is where the taste of these beers come from. So Chinook is a bitter hop. What kind of a hop is Citra?
Citra is definitely more of a flavoring hop, in that it's very fruity, has a lot of tropical flavors, more like kind of like a glass of orange juice, if you want to think of that. It's these IPAs more, say they call them juicy, so there's more like a juice. They want the juice. It was
almost like when I first smelled it, when I first poured it and smelled it, it was almost like a grapefruit kind of a smell to me initially when I tasted it. And it is a bit sweeter. I mean, it is a bit sweeter than a lot of the IPAs. But how do the people making the beer use the IPAs, and why? I mean, this is a thing. This is a thing that happens. Why have we seen sort of the alcohol levels? Why did they get so high for a while with the IPAs? What was that about?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that, Matt.
How did that talk about the alcohol levels getting higher with the IPAs and why that happened?
Well, they get higher because they'll boil them. They'll leave more sugar in the boil because the sugars don't all burn off, and that's what gives it the higher alcohol content. But the 8% is about, for a New England double IPA, is what they say. The New England IPA normally comes in at 8% IPA like this, and a lot of them are actually sweeter. A lot of breweries do make them sweet. People like that, the sweetness in with the hops. It's become very popular.
Wow, Matt,
I had to have a sip.
Fair enough. I'm starting to feel, if things loosen up here a little bit, it's because I'm feeling just lovely right now. In fact, I'm feeling exactly this much happier than when I started. So if I've got something here that says it's a sweet and spicy golden ale, and I don't know, I think I can taste a bit of spiciness, but that might be in my head because I read the label. Is that just a marketing ploy? I'm not advertising this one, by the way, but I just happen to be drinking the Blamford Fly. Yeah.
I was curious. I was going to ask you about that because I saw it said sweet and spicy.
Yeah.
Is it? Does it have spice? Is it spicy?
It's got that kind of tingle. Yeah. But do you know what? Do you know what? It's similar to like ginger beer. It's got that kind of ginger beer tingle, but not the flavor. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I quite like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I was curious to how it was going to come out. But I mean, I don't know if we get something like that in the States.
Yeah, so I could, if I was making my own craft beer, I could add spices, and that probably comes from the Belgians, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the Belgians are known for that style, just based on their brewing process. And monks brewed it. I mean, the yeast that they use is yeast that they just gathered outside in a net. And they would use that yeast and they brew with that. A lot of the monks and monasteries that would do it that way. And the beer that was one of the early introductions to beer. And I think Matt, if I'm not mistaken, I'd love to bring this up because Matt, when I first met Matt and he was living in Manhattan, Matt used to have Belgian beer parties with his roommates, and they had a little outdoor deck in their apartment, and you would show up to his place and there would be tons of beer out on this little balcony. And there's about 15 of us show up. And I don't know, it starts at 7, maybe it ends at 2. I don't know. Was there a time limit on when I think it was all of it had to be drunk? I'm not exactly sure, but it was that was an early great memory, and the beers that we had there were always fantastic. I mean, you can talk about that more than I could. So
yeah, it was a thing. I actually inherited that party with the apartment because it belonged to a friend of mine, and I moved in there. And then I met my wife, and she moved in with me, but we kept on having this party. And the thing of it is one of our friends' brothers actually imported Belgian beers into the United States for a living. So I would go to him every winter. We'd have it like around Christmas time. We'd go and spend a stupid amount of money on beer. We'd spend a stupid amount of money on snacks. And then we'd invite a bunch of people. And yeah, it would start around 7-ish and it would go until, well, I think, maybe 10 o'clock the next morning was about the latest one that we had. But that's because a couple of people decided they couldn't drive home. But what was nice about it was we had a huge range of beers. And now Belgian beers are interesting because unlike the beer that we're drinking now, which is also fabulous, Belgian beers are actually double fermented. So they're fermented once and then they ferment again in the bottle. So in a sense, you wind up with an alcohol content and a taste flavor profile that's a lot more like wine in terms of its complexity. Although I will say between the hops and the additives, the beer I'm drinking now isn't really all that far off it. But at the time, it was a totally unique thing. So we would buy these beers and we would always wind up getting like magnums of everybody's favorite beer to finish it off. So I had a collection of like knee-high size bottles with candles in them in my apartment for quite some time until my wife made me throw them all out because she did not like that. I felt very sad. And man, I remember like a friend of mine one time walked off into the snow at 3 o'clock in the morning, like just disappeared from the party. And we were so worried. We actually called his wife and we were like, Greg has walked out of the apartment and nobody really saw him go. So could you like let us know if he actually gets home? Because we're afraid he might just like pass out in a field somewhere and freeze to death. So it was that kind of a party.
So you two are New York drinking buddies. Before we let Eric go on his way, I want to know from you, Eric, like what kind of a drunk is he out with you guys in New York? Because we've only seen him at our karting events where he gets into the spirit of things. But Matt can take his booze. Like he can really handle his booze to the point where he trapped a very eminent and well-respected F1 tech journalist into a whiskey drinking session, and that tech journalist, and it could be anyone, it could be absolutely anyone, spent the whole morning in the car park, in the car, adamant that he wasn't going to take part in the race because he'd been up drinking with Matt the night before. But have you seen him? Have you seen his limits? Have you, Eric?
Well, we've had some pretty good times. I mean, those parties were long into the night, and I will say that if truth be told, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I stopped remembering. But me and Matt, I mean, we've shared many a beer, and it's always Matt'll go for a while.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
you're in for the long haul.
I think I may have run you reasonably close one of the nights after a karting event, Matt. We stayed up till about 3 or 4, having whiskeys in the hotel lobby, and I remember this was before like radio stuff kicked off. This is when still working full time in engineering, and I'm pretty sure we made the battle plan for what we were going to do with Missed Apex, other broadcasts, audiobooks, radio, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure we planned it all out in detail that night. And I think I've just instinctively been instigating and initiating the plan from that evening, but without remembering the details of what we talked about.
And that's probably why it's working. If we stuck to the details, we'd have screwed it up totally, no doubt.
Eric, before we let you go then, why don't you give us like a recommendation for people like me, perhaps, who are just getting into these ales and lagers? Point me to something that will blow my mind away and make me go, oh yes, I hate lager now. I am going to be an ale person. God.
That's going to be, I find it very difficult to make certain recommendations I feel may be tough because I don't know if you can get it in the.
Just do US then.
All right, in the U.S., if you're around here locally and you want to try some of that New England beer in New York City, other half is like the brewery for that. If you're down south in Virginia, Vale Brewing, Florida has Civil Society, California Monkish. There's several of them. Founders, a bunch of them.
Brilliant. When you said that civil one, I thought for a second you were saying civet, which is like civet coffee. So I was like, I don't want beer that's been pooped out by a gerbil or whatever.
No, yeah, Civil Society.
Civil Society.
And the New England, the New England area, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, great breweries there. Bissell Brothers.
Awesome. Dr. Eric, I nearly dropped the doctor. Dr. Eric Hops, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me. Have a good day.
I'm sure you'll catch up with Matt in the pub. I'm going to rudely hang up on you now. Thank you, Eric. And
that's all right. With your recording and bring me back something from Interborough, okay?
Okay. Yeah, I will.
Wow, there we go, Matt. I'm in a proper happy mood now.
Why haven't I done this sooner is really what's going through my head right now.
And we have the rights to play this track, but YouTube doesn't think we do. So this video is definitely going to get taken down. And they're going to definitely think that this was product placement too. So we're in trouble on all counts, I think here, Matt. But thank Eric for me when you next catch him in the pub, which sounds like it's frequently.
Yep. I will absolutely do that. I'm having a Belgian beer discussion in the chat right now. It turns out you can buy small Belgian beers over there, but over here they're generally like wine-sized bottles, like 750 milliliters.
Okay, so whilst I clumsily shuffle you back into the video realm so that people can see you, I didn't plan for Eric disappearing.
It's not that much of a treat. You're not missing much.
I think we can have a waffle and a general grumble. Have you got time, Matt? Have you got time to?
I've got at least this much time.
Do you know?
I'm holding up my mostly full beer glass for the audience that's just listening.
And people can see how much I struggle, like fitting in the images into little boxes on the live stream, and why I get stressed before the show. But yeah, it's been a momentous occasion in the UK because the kids have all gone back to school, pretty much across the country. Yeah, you're wincing, and if you're wincing for the same reasons I am, it's because I'm not terribly sure how good an idea that is. Or, okay, put it this way. I completely understand the motivation for sending kids back to school. Like, our kids have been desperately excited to go back. They've been delighted the day that they've gone back. The thing that's obviously the concern is, does that lead to a spread in coronavirus? Do coronavirus cases start to spike? Whereas I don't know how you're doing in the US. In the UK, we're already having a bit of a spike now, and they've had to bring in these weird rules that you can't have more than 6 people socializing now. You can get on the tube, you can go to a restaurant, you can go to a pub, you can go to work, but you can't have a barbecue with 6 people. Now, this, to my mind, that's been getting a lot of criticism. To my mind, this is aimed at stopping house parties. That's what they're trying to do. They've blamed it, the government, pretty much all on people in their 20s wanting to snog each other and therefore having massive house parties. So I think that as illogical as this no socializing with 6 people looks, it really is aimed at parties. So schools are back. And sorry, go on, man.
Yeah, well, we have a similar thing over here where there was in a particular neighborhood, there was a series of outdoor bars where the youths, because I'm going to blame this on the youth, because if you're my age, you've already been scared about your risk factors being an older person. But we've heard plenty of people say young people aren't as susceptible to the disease, they don't get as sick with it, and apparently this is translated into their tiny little undeveloped brains as, oh, I can just go live my life like normal, get totally drunk in huge crowds of people with no mask, and there could not possibly be any problem with this whatsoever. Yeah. So there was a bit of a crackdown over here about that as well. And it really all is, and we've seen it with the college kids going back here, you know, the socialization and the partying normality is something that should have been anticipated by older and wiser heads. But it is absolutely a thing. Like, oh, if you're going to tell me I'm going back to college, I'm living in a dorm, then yes, I'm going out with my friends on Tuesday night. And why should that be a problem? Because you've given me all the other normal things in my life at this point.
Right. And you've touched on like a very common kind of conflating of two things. Again, neither of us are virologists. So I'm just giving you my take. When you've said the young people think, oh, I'm at low risk, therefore there's no consequences to what I'm doing, they're still spreading it. Not that I think they're entirely to blame, but the line from authorities is kind of that because young people like kids, like little kids, school age kids can't, don't get affected as much. They won't spread it and they won't be super spreaders. That doesn't sit well with me. My personal anecdote, my personal experiences, which I'm more than happy to have challenged, of course, tell me that every time we've gone back to school after the summer holidays, we've almost immediately got colds and coughs. Okay, that could be seasonal, but boy, is it always around kind of term time when the kids go back. Parents will tell you that they used to never really pick up colds. And then when they started sending their kids to school, they suddenly have colds all the time. Go to a 4-year-old's birthday party. Everyone is tired and coughing. So I'm finding it very hard to believe that schools aren't somehow going to be these massive spreading environments. Hopefully I'm wrong, but we're seeing spikes already. And I can't imagine the schools are going to be open for that much longer. That said, it's wonderful for the children and education is important. I'm not disputing all of that, but I had the same reaction as you, which is schools are back. Ugh.
Yeah, and it is a thing. And we are struggling because our school's opening got postponed. We're struggling right now because our daughter, basically, her school week is going to be half a day once a week. And we're like, how worth it is it? And and I'm already on the hook to drive her instead of taking the subway because we're entitled people that can do that, at least until we have to sell the car because neither of us have jobs right now. But you get my point. And it's just like, how safe is it really? Is what she's going to get out of it worth it? And I think where we've come down for the moment is the number of people who are deciding they're going to go remote only is increased to like almost 40% here in New York. I think where we are is like, we will send her to like 1 or 2, and then she's going to say, yeah, it's worth it, or no, it's not. And then we're going to kind of roll with that decision because she got a lot. I know it's hard for many people, but actually learning at home and learning remotely, for my daughter turned out to be a really great thing for her. She did super well at it. And in terms of the academics and learning, it was a good thing. So for us, it's not maybe the same kind of hassle it is for parents with younger kids.
No, we've also got to remember as well, not all kids have got like super motivated parents who are either able or willing to put that effort into their home education. Andrew Storm in the chat room is absolutely right. By the way, I was trying to tell some sort of family, lifey, more jovial stories, but while we're here, Andrew Storm says schools do spread, but education is also important. I get that completely. Like I'm with you. Like if I was a kid during COVID, I would definitely have struggled. I don't think my parents had the capacity to sit there and do a whole homeschooling suite like me and my wife were able to do. And even then, we were lucky because we were freelancers working at home, so we could swap and rotate. So our kids have been in a massively privileged position to be able to have decent education at home.
Yeah, and for the young kids, especially, the socialization, seeing their friends is massively important. I don't mean to play down that aspect of it, but our kid is older. She's 15 going on 16. She's a junior.
Yeah.
So the cost benefit calculation for us is that's where we're making it. And also we've seen her experience of learning at home, having been successful. And I don't really know because like we're seeing our cases go up because there's been like wedding season in certain communities here in New York. And so there've been these mass weddings with like 400 people in closed environments. And now we're seeing the cases go up as the start of school.
Motorcycle rallies as well.
Like, oh, yeah.
Aren't 20% of your current cases all from a motorcycle rally or something?
Well, I retweeted that. And I believe that study was published. I've seen some people take exception to it. So I will simply say that rally promoted a fairly large number of cases within the state where it was held. And in terms of our national numbers, I think it's still somewhat under discussion by experts.
Yeah.
Is sort of where everybody is right now. But it was not a smart thing to do. We can all agree on that.
So I'll be clear here. Like I'm not rebelling against any of the rules and guidelines. I'm following what the schools are saying. So right now the schools are saying, no, we're opening up. We're doing all these things. So the kids are going. I don't feel like the individual risk to our kids is increased by us sending them to school. The risk is it's spreading. So if as a society we are deciding to send our kids to school, then that's the increased risk, is that we're having community spread. Me sending my individual child to school versus keeping him at home, that's a minimal extra risk compared to the whole risk of spreading everything. What I object to is the pretense that we can send our kids to school and still have tons of social distancing. Like, I don't know, prove me wrong, please, but it just really does feel like if we're sending them to school, that's it. We've said we're not social distancing anymore. We're prioritizing education. That's a valid choice, but just don't pretend that we can do both.
No. And I think this has been a failure. I mean, certainly in the US, of our leadership at the national level. And I think probably in the UK as well, in the sense that my dad is a scientist. I tend to try and look at things scientifically. I don't have graduate level science training. I do not have the maths to sit there and go through a study and adequately assess, is the p-value been hacked? Is the n-value large enough? I depend on other experts for that. But the general thinking, and I follow a lot of scientists and a lot of people who are experts and who write about this. And in general, I feel like the biggest failure across the board here has been how expectations have been managed.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is that from the moment this became an issue here in New York in March and in Italy in February, really you're looking at 1 to 2 years before anything that might resemble normal comes back.
Yeah.
And all along, that has been downplayed.
Yes.
And shortchanged. And so it's not surprising to me that when you give people a big chunk of their normal life back, they think, oh, thank God we've made it. And it just all goes right out the window. And now maybe this is because you have kids, I have kids. Yeah. We get pretty sensitive to managing expectations with people who tend to have unrealistic expectations about everything all the time. Like you told the story about your kid thinking they were getting the souvenir last week.
Oh, gosh, yeah. From the...
On vacation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly that kind of thing. We're all... Our society now, social distancing. We can go out to restaurants. School is starting back up. Oh, we get the souvenir, right, Dad? Yeah. Well, that's not exactly what I said, but clearly you've taken it that way. And
so hopefully I'm wrong and the schools aren't super spreaders and we don't go back into a second lockdown. All I really want to ask is, it doesn't feel like a big ask, if in 2 or 3 weeks, everything starts ramping back up again, and we've got to take up a whole bunch of other methods, and it's all coincided with schools opening. Can we just be honest and go, yeah, look, we either aren't doing enough in schools because we're not funding them properly to take the proper precautions, or fundamentally in a global pandemic, this is not the sort of thing we should be doing. That's all I want, is a bit of transparency. But hopefully, I'm completely wrong. This little mini kick that we're having at the moment is temporary. Everyone goes to school and everyone's happy. Because, Matt, my kids are so happy to be back at school. My boy's gone into year 6. He's 10. And a big parent step. A big parent step for us, Matt. He had to... And you know my boy. You've heard me talk about my boy.
I do know Treeface. I have met him in the person.
Wonderful kid. Smart kid. Kind. Real funny kid. He's the kind of kid, like, he could go to school with 2 shoes and come back with 3 right shoes, and not even a pair. And he'll come back with 3 right shoes, 1 on each foot and 1 on his hand, and no left shoe to be seen. That's the kind of kid he is. Because of all the COVID restrictions outside schools, which, by the way, was still a horrible germy scrum outside the school gates, he's having to walk home on his own. And we just had to make that decision. There's lots of 10-year-olds around the world that walk home by themselves. I was going to school when I was 8. But we didn't feel like he was ready, and we've had this pushed on us. So we've just had a real adventure. The adventures of Treeface walking home on his own.
Yeah, it was scary. I remember when we did that with our kid, even though we lived a quite literal stone's throw, as in you could stand on my porch, and if you had a good enough arm, you could literally hit her school. She had to cross 2 streets to get home. And it was a generally terrifying thing.
Oh, yeah.
When she first started out, going to school on her own and coming back on her own. But I think, at age 10, that's like you're to the point where they're starting to be able to, they're going to have to start learning those skills one way or another.
The little girl, I could trust her actually now to like be sensible, cross the road, look both ways, make good decisions. The boy will do it most of the time, but then every now and then, like even as recently as about 3 months ago, he just pegged it out across a supermarket car park. And I know he didn't look. I said, it looked like you didn't look. Be honest with me. Did you even pause to think about cars coming? And he was like, well, I couldn't hear anything. I was like, no. And this is only about 3 months ago, Matt. And so I when we got home, I was so like, I was disappointed in him, but I was more disappointed like in me as well. I thought, if you're still taking these risks, I must have just failed as a parent getting this message across a little bit, or maybe it's just a kid. But anyway, what I did was we did remedial crossing the road where I sat with him outside our house and we did 40 crossing the roads, and I made him, it's really cruel in front of all the neighbours, but I made him sit and cross the road 40 times backwards and forwards, each time checking, looking left and right and doing all that stuff.
It's good. Like I would take his I didn't hear any cars as a positive sign. He is evaluating his environment for the presence of cars. But this is where experience matters, because I don't know about you, but some of these new cars, if it's Toyota Prius or if it's an electric car, you're not necessarily going to hear them the way you hear an internal combustion car. So the point is, yes, you used your ears, but you must always use your eyes as well, because may not hear it coming. So like I get where the kid is coming from, but you were not wrong. You have to drill that into them, because it doesn't always make computational sense, especially to kids who are smart and can figure stuff out on their own.
I'm feeling a little bit of a judgment in the chat room about my punishment of 40 crossing the roads. But
no. That's how you. I mean, that's, as a musician, that you have to drill it to that level. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. And
when you've got a kid like Oscar, he's got certain skill sets, but like on a broad kind of life, he does have similar failings to me, just general lack of attention and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he's had to cross like a busy road, a couple of roads. He's walking with his friends, which is quite good because they seem a bit more capable, a bit more sensible than him. But we've had some real adventures with him. Like we've given him a phone and a Fitbit, so at least we can track him. Of course, first day, he goes straight in. He's jabbing around in the settings, manages to turn off mobile data. So else he's able to, so he texts me, but he's meant to send me a live location. We've got the family link and that on, so I should be able to track him as long as his mobile data's on, which it wasn't. So then I call him and at least he answers his phone. And I tell you what, Matt, he is having a whale of a time with his kids, with his mates, with his newfound freedom. And he's just like, this is the best. And he comes home buzzing because he's like a real human person out in the world for the first time. And it's, it's like amazing to see because he's my teeny tiny little baby. How is he out just on his own?
Man, you talk about that. My daughter went to visit a friend of hers in Williamsburg, which is a semi-distant neighborhood from ours. It's get on the train for 30, 45 minutes, or you get a car ride.
Yeah.
And thanks to the current situation, I said, well, I'll drive you over there and I'll pick you up so you can go hang out with your friend in a park outside, have a good time. And I get over there and her friend's meeting her in this park. So I just pull up to a random corner on the Brooklyn waterfront. She gets out the car and she's like, bye, Dad, see you later. And she just goes off. And I just sat there for a moment. I was like, what have I just done? Like I see her walking off and I'm just like, I've just released my child in some strange neighborhood without her friend. And she's apparently perfectly competent. I had that moment of like, shouldn't I just like go with you until you meet your friend, or
shouldn't I stay
call
here?
me? Yeah, and it's totally wrong because like she's entirely competent. She's gotten on the subway and gone there and met people on her own too. Like she can navigate the city and she's old enough to do it. But it was just visceral seeing her walk off, with strange people about, and oh man, it was terrifying.
It is terrifying. And like just when I went, my wife was meeting him like 2/3 of the way, so near our friend's house. So the mobile data's off. I'm like, he doesn't seem to have moved. Do you think he's got distracted? And she's like, no. I'm sure it's fine. So she's waiting for him, and it's 15 minutes more than she was expecting, time-wise. So 15 minutes more than it should be. So she's calling me, and we're not panicking, but we can't track him. We can't see him. She sat in the car. She's like, well, what do I do? Do we get out the car? Do I go and go through the underpass and go and like check on him? And he's like, no. Let's just wait. You know, his friend, he does this all the time. Finally, he pops up, happy as Larry. Nothing's wrong in the world. Where on earth have you been? Oh, we've found like a bunch of berries in a bush. So we've been pecking berries and eating them and just hanging out. And so there are several things wrong with this. Firstly, don't just eat random stuff you find in the street, please, boy. And secondly, like, you knew we were waiting, but he just lost all track of time. He was just like, this is great, I'm on my own. Yay, what shall I do with my new freedom? I'll pick berries off the ground and eat them like an animal.
Yeah, well, at least they were berries and not, leaves or dead animals or something like that.
And then day 2, he did have his mobile data on, but just for whatever reason could not find the meeting spot. So we've got a family WhatsApp group, and you can just click the video thing and it calls everyone in the group. So that was super handy. And we're all there, me indoors, me in the shed, wife in a car somewhere, and the boy, like, berries stuffed in his mouth. Where are you? I'm at the place. No, you're not at the place. You're with a thing. Why aren't any of your friends with you? Oh, they had to go somewhere different. Oh, geez. So this is day 3 today, and I'm just going to hide in the shed and just let it all play out on its own.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best. I've discovered that, different parents have different tolerances for deviations from plans and schedules. And I have always been terrible about being places on time. And, I'm very relaxed about showing up at the very, very last minute and still getting on the plane. My wife, not so much. So I have learned that because she possesses the greater anxiety about this sort of thing, that the smartest thing for me to do is just to sort of, that Homer Simpson gif where he just fades into the hedge. That's exactly me. And like if I need to go check on or make a call, I will do that. But otherwise, I'm just like, no, I'm just going to nope right out of this process and let the two of you work it out on your own.
I think you were wrong about the chat room. Mr. Phil just says, I'm so glad Spanners isn't my dad. Oh God, I just try. I think he's a lad. To be fair, he's a lad that probably needs a bit of tough love. But at least he's turned out as a decent human being, even if he can't navigate to a point on the planet.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing because when they're young, you have to teach them adaptive mechanisms.
Yeah.
For things that you perceive that are challenges, and as they get older, then they become able to start to navigate that. Like my daughter has 9 million alarms on her phone all the time because like me, she struggles with like when I get involved in a task, my ability to sense time passing just disappears. So she will she will have all sorts of alarms. Like she's worked out an elaborate method of keeping herself on track in a lot of different ways as she's gotten older. But when she was young, that was entirely on us to sort of just drill into her. You must do A, then B, then C, then D for the areas where she had these challenges.
Do you know how many alarms the boy's got set on his activity device?
How many?
He has 9 throughout the course of the day. One alarm is kind of to help us, and one's to wake up, and one is you should definitely be ready for school by now. If you're not, panic. Get your shoes on so we don't have to yell at him. So that's been quite effective so far. He's got a reminder that it's break time. One goes off that says, this is your chance to use the bathroom. You're going to be sitting cross-legged if you forget to go now. We've got one at lunch, one in the afternoon like that. We've got the get your phone out and tell dad you're setting off from school alarm. And then he's got an alarm at 5 o'clock because they're not doing physical training at school at the moment. He's set himself an alarm for every 5 o'clock. And he pulls some shorts on and he goes and does laps of the nearby field. And he goes off and does like 20 laps of the field. Weirdo. But yeah. But he's got all those
Imagine
alarms.
that running every day. Who would do that?
I've been on a run today. Thank you. I'm back, Matt. I'm back running regularly.
Oh, good. Good for you.
Yeah.
Doing your usual 5K?
I've been sticking to the 5K distance. I've been doing cross country, but today I went on the flat so that I could get some speed going. And I don't know if you ever have this, Matt, because you're still a fit guy. There is a significant delta to my running ability now than to, say, when I was in the military. And I will occasionally, some kind of like muscle memory kicks off where I will start running with the same mentality that I had in the forces, which is kind of ridiculous for a guy who's been out 10 years, is 10 to 15 pounds heavier, and is 40, to have that same mentality. And today I just completely went into just this complete like process mode, went far too hard, got back in, and it took me about 15 minutes to start breathing again. And my wife just doesn't get it. She's just like, what is wrong with you? Why would you do that to yourself? But I didn't mean to. I'm okay. This is actually fine. This is actually normal.
Well, no, it's a funny thing. I remember from racing, like you will, occasionally your body will get into this really deep rhythm where you can just go all the way and just keep on going. And I've had it before, especially like doing time trials and stuff. Like I remember training rides and the occasional race where you just ride people off your wheel and it's not an issue. But no, I mean, my pace now is probably 2.5 to 3 minutes slower than when I was in my 20s. And it's frustrating because I feel it. And I see the young, fit people like just blazing by me. And I'm like, I want to chase you down and beat you with a stick because I know I could at one point. But realistically, I know that, age and injuries will prevent me from ever really running that pace again.
Well, yeah,
I do recall.
Yeah, go on. You recall?
Yeah, I was going to recall, like, regards your wife, if all you're doing is breathing hard, you're fine. I remember being on training rides with guys on bikes and them like throwing up in the middle of like doing hill repeats and stuff like that. Like that's when you know you're really trying hard.
That was very common in the military on the fitness test, on the annual fitness test where you're like against the clock or you have like a limit for stuff. And quite often you'll get the PTIs, the physical training instructors, saying, if you're not on the verge of throwing up, you didn't try hard enough, which is not healthy. That's not a healthy, normal thing to do. And do 5Ks, if we did 3 miles and we were going out there doing, 6-minute miles or just over 6-minute miles, that wasn't uncommon. I can't get anywhere near that. I can't get close. That's like a 20-minute, 18, 19, 20-minute 5K. And, now if I was to pull a 24, I'd be like, whoa, I really pumped it today. I really flew around in that 24. Check me out.
Yeah, no, 6-minute miles was my target when I was in my early 20s. And now I'm happy with sub 9-minute miles. Like if I go out and I'm under 40 minutes for my run, I'm like, okay, I've broken the 9-minute barrier. I really want to break the 8. I really want to get down close to 8, but I don't know that it will happen.
Right. Before we go, because we've waffled we've had like 2 shows in one. We've had Dr. Eric Hops in here, and then I've wanted my normal waffle as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it couldn't have anything to do with the fact that I'm drinking beer at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Well, this is it. I do feel very relaxed.
Isn't it nice? I'm like, I've generally not had alcohol on this show because it's 9 o'clock in the morning. But I gotta say, having done it, I'm like, I could get horrifyingly used to this as a lifestyle. I will say,
I've definitely got that. I've got the feeling of afternoon pub. That's definitely the feeling I've got here. Afternoon pub. There's guys hanging out that for some reason aren't talking. They're just texting us messages from across the pub. Like Mark Greenhow, who says, Treeface isn't trying to get fit running around the field. He's just preempting whatever cruel and unusual punishment his dad might dream up. Oh, no, I've done myself no favours here. I've done myself no favours. Right. Guess what me and Nicola did when the kids were both at school for the first time since March.
You had family relations.
Now, I would never reveal such a thing as that. But we did work. We worked in the morning. And then the thought occurred to us. I came in and I went, let's just go have lunch. Just you and me. And I think that is the first time we have been out, just us together this year. It could be the first time this year because we were so busy at the start of the year as well. Her birthday, the kids came with us. So yeah, we went to a pub, we sat in the beer garden, I had loaded nachos with Cajun chicken, homemade nachos as well, with jalapenos and everything, and we had half an ale, and then another half, and then one more half, and then And then she drove us to go and pick up the kids. And we felt like we'd earned it. Parents of the world will relate, but I did feel like we'd earned that.
That's kind of funny. Jack Trigg in the chat guessed nap, which I would say would probably be me and Amanda at this point.
Certainly part of my Monday routine. So obviously I've got radio in the morning, Missed Apex in the evening, and then the editing goes on into the night. So I usually finish up about 11 p.m. So I tend to have a bit of a slow start on a Monday. But so now my routine is going to be get them ready for school, put them, send them off to the school thing, and then sit on the sofa. I don't start work until 1 p.m. on Monday. So I've got the time from after the school run till 1 p.m. to just sit in my pants on the sofa and just watch terrible sitcoms. And I can pretty much guarantee there will be some nappage in there too.
Yeah, it's just decompression time. Think of it that way.
Exactly. Still haven't found the other outro. So it's just remains for me to say, work hard, be kind, have fun, remain indoors, except for school, pret a manger, going to your crowded office, on the tube, on the bus. Where else can you go? Eat out to help out, but no more than 6 people in your house. Remain indoors on your own, unless you have to work and do stuff, or go to a crowded school drop-off where nobody's wearing masks and you're kind of just all huddled past each other. Apart from all of those things, remain indoors.